language is simple, right? It's something that we use every day. Our students should have no problem getting it on their test. No, wrong. I've noticed that figurative language is one of the most difficult subjects that you can teach your students, and it is on almost every state test from the lower levels all the way up through college. So what can you do as an educator to make sure your students successfully learn how to identify figurative language and how to use it? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, I'm LaWanda Shields with 2Q Classrooms, and this is my space for fellow teachers, homeschool moms, and or homeschool dads. And today we're going to be talking about figurative language. First, let's activate some prior knowledge. This calls for you doing a little research. Find a song that is popular, as the kids say, that's trending at the time, and find some figurative language inside of those song lyrics. Put a copy of the lyrics on your board, well, your Promethean board, your computer, whatever the screen is that you're going to use to display the song lyrics. Give your students a copy. I learned it's always best if they have a copy of whatever you're going over, and then begin. So when they walk in, you might even want to have the song playing. Make sure, though, you vetted this song so it doesn't have any explicit lyrics, because some of them will. So while the song is singing, while they're looking at it on the board, and while, you know, the paper's already on their desk, then you can begin to talk to them about the song. What do you like about the song? What are they saying? You know, you're asking them for their opinions, and they like that. They like to get involved. They may be even up doing a little jig, and that's okay as long as they're not getting out of control in your classroom. And once they finish and say, do you know that this song has figurative language? Give them a definition of what figurative language is, and then point out the figurative language within that song. The next way I like to use figurative language to get them started is to use picture books. Picture books and those lower level books are loaded with ways that you can teach figurative language and other activities. So I'm using a complete picture book, which is nothing but pictures. I find two things in there. What is this doing? What is this saying? What could you compare this to? How would you compare it? Write it in a sentence. And so when my students are writing in a sentence, I can go, aha. Then what that's called is if you want to say it's a simile or it's a metaphor, then you have introduced that figurative language device. I always go over those. And at that point, I like to give my students a list of the definitions of the types of figurative language. So I would have a list of, you know, on my list, I make sure I have what a simile is, what a metaphor is, what's an idiom, what's an allusion, what are all these things. And as we go through the unit, then I can point them out, or they can point them out to me as we're going. So song lyrics, picture books, or lower elementary books, books that are easy to read, like Quick as a Cricket. All of these are great. The next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we're pointing out that you can start to migrate towards those poems. Poems are loaded with figurative language. So when you get into the poetry, you say, hey, you know, you're guiding them through line by line or stanza by stanza, and then you find their figurative language, and you say, hey, this is figurative language. So again, it's calling for you to have done your homework, for you to have done your research before class. Like I said, what I like to do is already have the song lyrics, the song or the poem or whatever it is we're going to use on their desk for the day. So maybe you can have a classroom set or classroom copies of Quick as a Cricket or whatever this book is, but you could have typed out some excerpts from it, the ones that you're going to use as a demonstration for your class. How do you teach figurative language in your class? Let me know in the comments below. I do, we do, you do. It's time to get your students into action. So as I'm teaching them about figurative language, I need them to begin to compose some figurative language of their own. So I start by letting them do it in class groups. So you put them in groups of no more than 4. Especially if you're doing middle school, you may want to even break it down to 3 because, you know, they like to talk. And not just about the lesson, but break them up into groups and let them compose some figurative language together. Maybe tell them to do 5. Do 5 sentences or 5 examples of this or 5 examples of that, you know, of metaphors, of 5 examples of similes, 5 examples of allusion, 5 examples of whatever it is that you're asking them to do. So they'll do the 5 examples in their group, and then you get one person in the whole group can share out what they've composed. This way you get everyone involved. You got them. They don't feel so lost and they're comfortable. So after they've done it as a group, then I like to assign my students to create a booklet of figurative language on their own. So I always gave an assignment where I gave a certain number of similes, metaphors, allusions. I can't even remember what the rest of them were. But I gave them a guide sheet, and then they composed their own figurative language booklet. When you're talking about middle or high school students, you might even want to have them compose their own poem using the figurative language, or write a story, write a narrative, write whatever it is, expository essay, real short, and include this number of figurative language. And you know, you might even want to do a paragraph, whatever it is that you're doing with your class. Activities that I found to work really well with my students when I'm introducing figurative language are task cards. Task cards are great ways for my students to get their hands on the items, the figurative language, and to manipulate them. You can buy these from book companies, or you can get them from places online like Teachers Pay Teachers. I do have several task card sets in my store. So what I did was I printed out the task cards, I laminated them, and I issued them out to my students. You can do these as center activities, or you can do these at a teacher's table. So either way, the students got to manipulate them and work on. I also did the figurative language puzzles, which I created. They were the little squares where it had the figurative language word, and then I think the definitions on there also. I have to go back and check, and then they had to match those. These worked really well with my students in getting them to identify what figurative language was, and these manipulatives they could do on their own. The more you can get your students to interact with these figurative language devices, the more you can get them to work on their own, the more they're going to remember them. And then last but not least, after they've done the song lyrics, after they've done the books, after they've done the interactive activities, after they've made their, made their own, then my students, I like to give them the figurative language devices in a paragraph or something that's in the same format that's going to be on their state test. So these were ways to teach figurative language to your students so that they can be academically successful. Again, this was one of the that took your classrooms, talking about ways to teach figurative language to your class so that your students can be successful on their tests. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hey, don't forget to give this video a like, a thumbs up, and to follow and to subscribe for more teaching tips and hacks.